Hey guys, I'm back with a new video, and today I want to talk about Nintendo's trajectory with the Nintendo Switch going forward. I will admit that I was inspired to make this video after watching a recent piece by Colin Moriarty, who, as you may know or not know, previously worked for IGN for a number of years as a part of the PlayStation team, and then he went out on his own with Greg Miller doing kind of funny games, and these days is it's kind of a long story I won't get into in this video, but he's gone out on his own doing Colin's Last Stand. He does political commentary, but he does have a separate YouTube channel that he dedicates to speaking about video games, and he recently did a video on whether or not Nintendo can continue its meteoric success with the Nintendo Switch. But before considering this video, I think you have to understand this is an individual who doesn't have an unbiased outlook for Nintendo. He has pretty much been negative towards Nintendo ever since they came out with the Wii system, and he definitely was predicting that the Switch was going to be a colossal failure, so I'm not totally surprised that he has some reasons to doubt whether or not the Switch will continue to be as popular as it has been. Now, in fairness, the video that he did took a look at two different outlooks. One was a positive outlook that Nintendo will just continue to do really well, but he definitely spent a lot more time and energy on the negative outlook. And despite having done this, I still think that a lot of his concerns were overstated and didn't have a lot of validity to them. The thing we have to keep in mind that in the video game industry, historically, and you can go down to almost any console that's ever existed, this is a momentum-based industry. When a system gets off to a really hot start, what ends up happening is people, through word of mouth, continue to jump on board with that system, which is what makes it very difficult for Microsoft to currently turn their fortunes around, even though they have launched the Xbox One X. PlayStation seems like no matter what they do, they're on a current successful trajectory, and they have continued to increase their sales year over year, and a lot of this is due to the momentum that they have built up and the price points now that they're able to provide, which are much lower than they used to be, so it appeals to a wider audience. And now, in terms of the Nintendo Switch, one of Colin's main concerns is that Nintendo has already played two of its biggest cards in Mario Odyssey and Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's true that Nintendo has historically not had such a great first 9 months in terms of launching major IP on one of their new systems. However, I don't think that it would have made a world of a difference to have those two titles releasing on the Wii U. With Nintendo, it has been the combination of great games, great IPs, with hardware that sells itself. That has been when they have done really well, and you can't really have one without the other. For example, Nintendo had a very good early lineup of games on the Nintendo GameCube, and while it did okay in some regards and personally is one of my favorite systems, it didn't reach a broad audience. It should be noted too that when you look at the way games directly drive hardware sales, there isn't really this pattern where the more times you release a game in an IP, it ends up not having a significant effect on hardware sales just because you had already released a game in that IP. When you look at the 3DS and you line up when a new Monster Hunter game came out, there always is an impact on hardware sales when a new Monster Hunter game came out. Even in some cases, they were basically re-releasing the same Monster Hunter game with some new twists to it or some new DLC, and the game that had previously released on the 3DS was able to provide a boost to hardware sales again. And you'll notice as well that even this past Christmas, another Pokemon game came out on the 3DS, and again it was able to boost hardware sales, even though they have released Pokemon many times. So I don't see this point being valid. Nintendo can release more Mario games, more Zelda games, and that will just give more people a reason to jump on board with the system. And the second major flaw in this argument is to try and boil Nintendo's first-party offerings and their first-party power down to two IPs and be like, oh, well, Nintendo is basically a Mario and a Zelda company. No, they have other IPs that sell just as well or even better than 3D Mario and Zelda. Historically, 2D Mario has actually been a much greater sales opportunity for Nintendo than 3D Mario. It just turns out that this 3D Mario is so good, and it's coming out on a system at a time where they're really targeting the core gamer to where it's actually selling better than a lot of previous 3D Mario titles. But Smash Brothers is a huge IP, and that is going to be a big system seller. The fact is that they've been using pre-existing games like Mario Kart 8, and I believe they'll be re-releasing the same Smash Brothers game in the future on the Switch, which gives them a boost, like Mario Kart 8 gave the system a boost, and the new Smash Brothers will give them the boost. But it will also open up the opportunity for them to release new Mario Kart and new Smash Brothers in the future for an even more significant boost, because this system hasn't received all new games in those franchises yet. The other thing you have to consider is that the Switch is moving into uncharted territory, where it is a home console and a handheld all in one, which means, possibly more importantly than anything else, that Pokemon's mainline series is coming to a console for the first time. And Pokemon has historically been a bigger system seller than Zelda or 3D Mario. So there's that to consider as well. He did mention that Metroid Prime 4 wasn't as big a system seller as some Nintendo fans made it out to be, but I don't really know who those Nintendo fans are that are out there trying to suggest that this is going to be a massive system seller. It's definitely going to bring in a lot of historic Metroid fans, and if it's as good as it can be, it'll definitely have some solid sales figures. But yeah, I'm not expecting it to have the same impact as Zelda or Mario, but it definitely will bring in some gamers to the system. And on top of that, you're going to see a lot more third-party support than Nintendo has historically received on their consoles due to the success that it is having, and especially considering that the success outside of the concept itself is coming through people wanting to buy the system to play traditional games. So that lines up much more with what third parties have to offer than, say, the Wii, which maybe 50%, if not more, of the success came through party games, Wii Sports, and non-traditional type of games. So it's much more appealing system for third parties to port their games to, or make all new games, but in the style of game that they're used to making. So yeah, there's a lot of talk about this year maybe not being the biggest year for Nintendo first party, but I think that they don't really need a ton of big first party games this year, because they're going to be getting a lot more third party support, and we've already seen that through the announcements of Wolfenstein 2 and Dark Souls, as well as Square Enix's Octopath Traveler. And based on comments from Emily Rogers, we're going to see a lot more big third-party announcements. It wouldn't surprise me one bit to see Call of Duty coming to the system, as well as Grand Theft Auto 5. Nintendo's going to fill out the lineup this year with ports of some bigger Wii games or Wii U games. And the fact that the Switch has already sold more units than the Wii U tells me that a lot of people who are interested in the Switch and are going to be buying the Switch in the future didn't have a Wii U. So for this demographic of people, and to continue growing the system, they're going to have a lot of powerful Wii U games to bring over. It would be really nice if Nintendo was able to have the new Pokemon out this year. I don't think there's any chance that the new Metroid game will come out this year, but they're not going to need it. They're still at the original price point for the Switch, and they didn't really do any really appealing bundles last Christmas. So I think that as they go forward into the future, they're going to be able to offer some better deals to get more people on board, just like Sony has done with the PlayStation 4. Now, a lot of people will point to the PlayStation 4 Pro as potentially being the driver of increased sales. However, I think the bigger driver of increased sales has been offering the PlayStation 4 regular system for a much cheaper price point. At Christmas, they had a wonderful bundle that came with a key game and PlayStation 4 for $199, and they just sold a boatload. So, you know, Nintendo's going to have the opportunity to bundle Breath of the Wild in with a system, maybe at what the price of the current system is right now, and Mario Odyssey going into the future. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to grow the base of gamers in the Switch. I think one of his projections on the negative side was that the Switch would maybe only sell 45 million units lifetime, and I just don't see how that's at all realistic. The system is going to easily have 30 million sold by the end of this year, and likely more than that. Let's face it, it's much more popular than the 3DS was when the 3DS first came out. And the 3DS, despite having to compete against Nintendo having also a console, has been able to sell over 70 million units. I just don't see how the Switch, which is a hybrid device that is going to appeal to a larger base than just a handheld or just a console, is going to end up selling less units or fewer units than the 3DS, which got off to a rockier start than the Switch and only had handheld teams from Nintendo working on it. Now they're going to have teams that were making console games and handheld games working on the same console. So in any event, I think that the Switch is looking very positive, and even if they don't do any new variations of the system, which I think that they definitely will do, the system will sell a lot better than the 45 million units that Colin Moriarty is suggesting on the lower end of the spectrum. So give me your thoughts in the comments below. Do you agree with me that the Switch, at the very least, is going to be a very successful system over its lifespan, or do you think this is something that is a flash in the pan and is suddenly out of nowhere going to see its sales drastically decline to match up with Colin Moriarty's low-end projections?